Good afternoon and welcome to the ninth edition of our NOVA EDA webinar series, Beyond COVID-19 Business Resiliency webinar series. I'm John Jacobs. I'm your moderator for today, as I have been for the entire series. We're about 3/4 of the way through our series at this point. And I will just take you through a bit of an agenda, if I may. Let me go share my screen with you. And you can see my wonderful technology skills and doing screen manipulation. Great. So I'll take you through a bit of an agenda. So I'll take you through, as I do every week, an update of the last 2 weeks on some key statistics. We have a live poll that I will launch in just a moment, and it's only 5 questions, I believe. They're very quick questions to answer. I would encourage you, please, to jump on that and just answer those quick questions, because we're going to use the results of that poll just after we have a bit of a panel discussion, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So that's essentially the structure. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and launch that poll. So just give me 1 sec. And here we go. And you folks should be able to see a poll there. Let me just, one piece of housekeeping. To ask a question, if you mouse to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a nav bar. It will pop up. It'll say Q&A and poll, and just use them appropriately. And I think if you're on a Mac, you go to the top of your screen. So just be cognizant of that. Let me now just go ahead and share my screen yet again. Let's see here. Sorry, folks. Just want to make sure I'm all in the right place. Okay. I think Zoom takes a little bit to finesse there. Great. So here's the quick update I give every couple of weeks at the top of this program. Top line stats. So the PPP loan deadline, as you know, is extended from the end of June until the 8th of August, which is in just 2 days. So there is a substantial amount of funding left in the PPP round 2, essentially, $130 billion remaining as of the end of July. I mentioned last webinar, there's this great tool created by the CPA Association. It's pppforgivenesstool.com, and that simplifies the paperwork for submitting the request to have a loan converted into a grant. Certainly, as you know, if you're watching the news or reading the news, Congress continues to negotiate a variety of additional support packages financially, and this includes a possible extension of the PPP to the end of 2020. Unemployment filings were released this morning for the week ending July 25th. They stand at 1.2 million filings. This is from the Department of Labor as of this morning. That's a decrease of about 200,000, almost 250,000 filings over the prior week period. The unemployment rate, we saw this, I haven't changed this one stat, did drop in July, continues on the 11.1 or so trend at the current time it was through the 18th actually. The $600 per week unemployment supplement has ended. It ended at the end of July. And again, there is lots of conversations in Congress right now and with the administration. The Senate is in session until the 10th of this month, and then both the houses will return on the 8th of September. We had just released at the end of July, the second quarter GDP numbers. The second quarter contracted by 32.9%. That's on an annualized basis, reported by the Department of Commerce. A Q3 forecast GDP has an expansion or growth of 20.3, and this is provided by the Federal Reserve of Atlanta yesterday. It's the same source that we used when reporting that estimate in the prior period. Total coronavirus or COVID cases as of this morning, according to Johns Hopkins University, worldwide stands at 18.8 million cases. That's an increase of 3.6 million over 2 weeks. US cases are now at 4.8 million, which is an increase of 830,000 over the prior 2 weeks. And US deaths at 158,300, which is an increase of 15,096 over that same period. Remote workers. These next two bullets are relevant to today's conversation quite a bit, and there'll be other detail as well. Remote workers are expected to permanently rise as a percentage of the U.S. workforce to 25 to 30% by the year ending 2021. And as you recall, when the pandemic began, there was a number as high as 41% of folks working remotely. Of course, that number has come down a bit, but still much higher than this number. And this is with respect to permanent remote working, whether in full or part. Keep in mind that this is from a prior behavior of 3.6% of US workers working remotely by the end of 2019. So a significant increase in all cases. Verizon saw a 1,200% rise in the collaboration tool usage, their tool usage, and an 81% increase in VPN, or virtual private network usage, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Not a surprise, but it just shows the tremendous impact to cloud-based and network-based technologies, and frankly, their ability to meet significant needs. We have an outstanding panel today gathered, and I'll go ahead and introduce them. But initially, we have Mark Flynn, Jay Sabu, and Sean Sullivan. And we have the actual individuals here. So instead of having a slide, I'm going to come out of my screen sharing mode, and there they are, all in their places and with bright shining faces. And so let me go ahead and introduce, if I may, all three. Mark Flynn, which is on my upper left corner. Mark, can you wave? That's Mark Flynn, is the global lead for the Communications and Media Research Group at Accenture. In this role, he focuses on developing and maintaining Accenture's perspective on what's happening in these industries by drilling down into financial analysis, primary research into consumer business perspectives, and deep exploration of key industry trends. Mark has a long track record of developing strategic insights built on original research. Jay Sabu is a lifelong, Jay, wave, that's Jay, is a lifelong entrepreneur and an active angel investor. Jay currently serves as the Chief Operating Officer of Harmonia Holdings Group, LLC, a leading provider of information technology solutions to the federal agencies. Jay also serves on the board of directors of KDDL Limited in India, which is, I believe, a family-owned company. Jay, is that correct?
That's right. It's a holding company.
A holding company, right. Harmonia, this is interesting since this is the Northern Virginia webinar. So Harmonia Holdings Group was born in 2006 at Virginia Tech's Corporate Research Center in Blacksburg to bring innovation and change to the federal IT sector. And we'll get into that more in a little while. Sean Sullivan, my lower right screen, is Regional Sales Director at Dell Technologies for the Mid-Atlantic region, so Delmarva to us, in the commercial markets area. Prior to joining Dell 9 years ago, Sean served as financial advisor with Merrill Lynch. Dell Technologies, obviously, is a rather famous brand, provides essential infrastructure for organizations to build their digital future, transform IT, and protect the most important asset, information. Dell employs over 150,000 people across 180 countries and had a fiscal year 2020 revenue of $92 billion. So let's kick off, I could, with Mark. And Mark, you and I began to talk because of the research, some recent research Accenture had conducted with SMB, small, medium-sized businesses, with regard to COVID-19 and their needs. So you have a few slides. Could you go ahead and take us through that, and we'll just have a conversation around that.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, John. I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know when you guys can see it. And share.
I sense it's coming. Yes, I see it.
Wonderful. So it looks like I can't get rid of this bar at the bottom, but you'll be able to see all the relevant information. So as John mentioned, as a firm, and especially as a research team, we've been doing a lot of work around the impacts of COVID. I mean, that's kind of core business for consulting anyways, is helping companies manage change and disruption. And this is, both of those, to the nth degree. We, have both published our own point of view on what's happening in the industry, specifically focused on comms and media, which is my kind of area of expertise. But we also did primary research into B2B and consumer impacts, as John mentioned, and I want to walk through the SMB impacts here, just to kind of give a flavor of how companies in perhaps other parts of the country and other parts of the world are responding to this crisis, or how it's impacting them. Just briefly about the study. This was a 4-country study looking at 100 SMBs in each country. The countries were the US, UK, Germany, and Italy. Spanned a number of different industries, from ICT to retail, financial, manufacturing, engineering, and construction, and a range of company sizes from very small to very medium. And important context, given how fast all of our lives have been moving. This study was conducted at the end of May, but our focus of the study wasn't necessarily just point in time experience, but really looking forward to what to expect. I believe at some point we were talking about post-COVID. Now we're talking about what the new normal really looks like. So a summary, and then I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on each of these areas. Business has changed. A lot of you are in this situation, but customers can't come to your stores or your operations anymore. 35% of small businesses have switched to online only sales. This crisis is changing the way that we are working, the way that we're living, and the way that companies are doing business. And that's not just a point in time change, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it feels more kind of dramatic and long lasting than just this moment. Digital service use accelerates. This is probably the best illustration of that trend. I mean, most businesses were on a journey to digitization, to cloud capabilities before the pandemic hit, and that is only set to accelerate. 63% of SMBs plan to increase their use of public cloud, and we expect that to be not just a public cloud statistic, but a digital capability statistic, a digital transformation statistic. Customer care, always important, obviously, but the ways that we are going to do customer care is going to change. This stat here of 57% of SMBs expect to use video for customer care. I'm sure many of you are experiencing that already. One of the kind of a companion stat to this from our consumer study, since we were looking specifically at communication services providers, were that 60% of consumers would feel little to no loss if their CSP retail location did not return after the crisis. So, we kind of think about this in terms of this. Now is the moment to kind of rethink customer sales.
And just for the audience benefit, CSP is the communications service provider. Yeah.
Great point, John. Sorry, industry mindset. Yes,
yeah.
Communications
Okay, no
service provider. Absolutely. Going to the next slide here, and this is just a little bit of a deep dive into some of those themes that I was talking about. So new ways of working and doing business. I'm sure all of you understand that a large percentage of companies have experienced sales decline during COVID-19. Certainly, there's areas of growth, but for the most part, this has been a damper on business activity. And from our perspective, yes, it's painful, but it also presents an opportunity to rethink the way that business is run, the way that your business is run. That extends a little bit to how you interact with customers. What is the immediate change, and what can you learn from those changes? As you look forward to the future of your businesses. And finally, working from home. I saw this as part of the poll question, so I'm very curious to see what the results are there. But the vast majority of companies did provide support to employees working from home. Interesting result of the study that's not on the slide was that many small businesses, especially compared to medium or enterprise level businesses, very much expect and want their employees to come back to work. after the crisis is over. And I think the takeaway here is that work from home is not a one-size-fits-all solution, but thinking about your employees and how to support them is something that's probably both important to your business and important to your employees. The shift to digital. I think that this has been an early learning and really has gained momentum since the crisis started. That this is going to be a moment where a lot of the digital ideas that have been out there for a while really become implemented. Starting, of course, from a CSP or from a communication service provider perspective with connectivity. Reliable connectivity is critical. Almost half of the SMBs we surveyed expect to increase their spend on broadband capabilities after the crisis. Security and cloud, core digital capabilities. I mentioned this already, are going to become more important. And embracing digital as a way to drive growth. And business capabilities by using things like online employee training seems like a really valuable piece of the puzzle. And then the last thing that I want to touch on here is customer care. The survey was obviously conducted with a communication service provider mindset, but we've done other customer experience for business research, and I think that these can be expanded beyond just the CSP point of view. Companies want their service providers to act more like business partners. I mean, it's both obvious and it's true. Right. Proactive business support is a key feature of great customer care. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that aspect of it in just a minute. Increased appetite for self-care amongst some SMBs. Almost half prefer to interact with CSPs via self-service. Again, I'm going to touch on this a little bit more, but what we actually find is that there's different flavors of what businesses expect from their service providers. Some prefer more high touch, some prefer more low touch. And actually there's a little bit of a scale that the larger the company, the more comfortable they seem to be with digital interactions or self-service. And finally, I mentioned this already, but omni-channel customer care is very important, and video is only one piece of that. So, John, I'll stop there.
Sure.
Obviously, I'm happy to answer questions about this study or any of our other findings, but I think you mentioned, and we'll get deeper into the conversation here, but we'll be able to share these materials. This is all public facing after
That's right.
the conversation today.
That's right. We can share this. It'll be on the novaeda.org website, and we'll post that there in the next few hours, hopefully, if not by tomorrow morning. We talk about Accenture's a very large company. So I'm going to ask you first question. I encourage Jay and Sean to jump in too, but I think about your clients, and I can imagine they tend to be larger clients, although I don't know that definitively. What are some stories, lessons learned that your clients have had in transforming to a digital environment, or just the remote working and the current behavior? Do you have a couple of one or two examples?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more generic than specific examples. I work again in our internal capabilities, so my role is more kind of understanding what the mindset is and what the strategies out in the mindset, or out in the world. But I think what we found is a couple of things. First of all, businesses were not particularly resilient going into this moment. Many of us, including businesses, were caught unaware when this crisis hit. But the mindset quickly switched from oh my goodness, to how do I need to transform my business, to not just fix the current problems, right? But how do I use this moment to prepare for the future? And as a firm, we think about resilience, not just as technology resilience, but business resilience, kind of across the, employees, across operations, supply chain, all the features of the business that are really important. And really, how can you plan those systems to be capable of adapting to maybe not the next coronavirus, but the next business shock, because that is going to come. And how can you create systems that are resilient for that situation?
Another question I have is on the communication service providers. So
Yeah.
this is Verizon, Comcast, AT&T. Pick your CSP. What sort of, from an SMB, small, medium-sized business perspective, what are like the core services there that
Yeah.
they want?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, um, for this, the companies that we consult with, SMBs are a high priority target. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that. And there's been a lot of energy and effort put into how do we address this market, because CSPs, especially in the US, have never been particularly good at capturing the market, despite the fact that everybody needs some level of connectivity. So the real focus for our clients is expanding their portfolio of services, moving into things like security, cloud capabilities, even CRM capabilities, and doing so with best-in-class solutions. So taking the perspective that we have a customer relationship because we do provide connectivity services which are important for our customers. How can we make that part of a bigger picture for our customers? How can we be, consultative, I suppose, to our customers? So they think about, how to bring packages to market, how to adjust their operations to be more flexible and do a better job of engaging with businesses and thinking about what their clients really need. So yeah, I mean, I would focus on those core ones of cloud security and connectivity, but that suite of services, I would expect it to expand, if you haven't already seen that impact from your existing partners.
That's great.
Hey, John,
Yes.
this is Sean Sullivan. So some of the lessons learned that we've spoken to customers about, and again, been with Dell for 9 years, appreciate the introduction, appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak to, what I call the front line, people who are running businesses out there, managing payrolls, doing all what they need to do to make sure that they can survive in a time like this. One of the things that we talk to our customers about is, by God, do not throw money at technology for the sake of throwing money at technology. Like, be smart about it. And I'm a technology company, okay? Not me, but Michael Dell is, and on behalf of that. So we're very much consulting customers. That one of the lessons we've learned is that there are customers that are making decisions out there based on what feels good versus what is smart, looking at soft costs and hard costs. So when you look at people that are going into an office and the owner of the company likes the fact that people come in and there's, camaraderie and they're around the water cooler, there's no doubt about it that those times are changing. So we are helping customers adapt with the reality that there's a way to do this seamlessly without throwing money at technology. There will be a technology requirement, but the idea is make sure that you do your research so you don't overspend. That's the biggest thing. And we've had customers that have come to us who have purchased gear and have then come back and said, look, I need to do a return. I would say, no problem. I understand that if it's within the model, because these businesses have to make their payrolls. They have to drive business. They have to watch their margins, and they have to, what we help them adapt to is being a little bit more automated, a little bit more efficient, and less focused on just what we call stovepipe and block hardware. And I'm a hardware company, but the idea is that we are doing a lot of consulting services, just helping owners manage the reality that a portion of their workforce is going to have to be remote. And Dell Technologies actually has it's just over 150,000, a little more. But we've been a work from home place for probably 2/3 of our global force for the last 13 years. So that's the one thing of the lessons learned in speaking with customers. Just don't throw money at technology. Be smart about it.
And that's a great point. And I think Jay Sabu, also leading a technology company, and to Mark's point, where a lot of other companies were perhaps caught by surprise when the pandemic began, Jay's company was not. And Jay, maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And I like the point that I believe Mark was making about sort of this holistic view about resilience. Maybe, Jay, if you could talk a bit about that. And you're on mute at the moment.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I think it's one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out in the conversation from Mark and Sean also. It seems to me that, I think it was applicable to us. I think for owners of companies, small, medium-sized businesses, I think the number of choices available, technology choices available, makes it very difficult as well, right? Everybody's trying to kind of get a piece of the market, right? Whether it's the last mile providers like AT&T and Verizon and Comcast, and they're going to give you something, or there's other cloud providers who are kind of trying to provide you so many different things, such as communications devices and stuff like that. So I think, again, it's always good to have companies that can help you, consult and advise you on that. But I think I would advise owners of companies to really kind of do their own research, take some time to really understand what are the different technologies and how some of them work together. Because one of the biggest challenges is, you buy something from one company, a lot of things have started to work together, but then you buy something from somebody else and it doesn't quite work as well, and then you spend more time trying to make them work together versus something different. Talking about Harmonia itself. So, Harmonia, we're a federal IT company, but we've always been, again, other than providing our services to federal agencies, we operate out of 5 or 6 different offices nationwide, and we've actually got employees in different parts of the world. We have employees in Oconus as well as in Europe. So the need to kind of work as a distributed group was always there, okay? And so we built our infrastructure, even as a small business, to be completely digital. We're a Microsoft Azure shop. All of our work is we do it in the cloud. Every single one of our employees has laptops. We have the right security protocols in place. We're a top secret cleared facility. So we needed to have things like the NIST standards and stuff like that to kind of work with government data. And we've already kind of put all of that stuff in place just to be able to work on this. So when this pandemic started happening, in fact, I think I told you, John, I was back home in India. That's where my parents are. Of course, I've been in the country now for 35 years, but my parents were there, and I was visiting with them, and I was actually supposed to spend a little more time there. And then I started to see all of this happen, and I just decided I was going to cut short my visit and come back. And I'm sitting at Delhi airport on I think it was the 10th of March. And I'm getting ready to board the United Airlines flight, and there's a message that's popping up on my machine that says India closes its borders. So I was probably on the last flight back, and I literally landed here the next morning. And the first order of business for us was I'd already talked to the rest of our leadership, and we just issued an order that everybody was going to go just pick up your laptops, get ready for it. Effective next that Thursday, we were going to go virtual, and really. We've really had very few hiccups on that. We've got a bunch of different sort of communications technologies, just because our different clients and different partners use different technologies. So whether it is Zoom, even though Zoom has got a lot of security issues, or WebEx, or GoToMeeting, or Microsoft Teams, we're sort of working with all of those, right? So it's been a pretty seamless experience for us. And again, I think I would encourage everybody to look at what has happened with this pandemic, to kind of, again, it is what it is at this point with the pandemic, but going forward, right? I think it's going to create a fundamental shift in how we work, right? That's my personal opinion. I think how we go to office and whether, what's the need of that office, right? I think it's going to change, right? I think you're going to flip it. Instead of the office being a necessity, it's going to become an optional thing. I think human touch is important, and I think that's going to get is always going to be necessary. But I think it's time for people to look at this as an opportunity to really kind of get themselves completely digitized so they can work from anywhere.
So let's play that forward a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think that this is a new reality, and that, yes, we're in the middle of this pandemic, but this is a ground shift moment, right? Humans have other needs than to type on keyboards and to show up on a Zoom call or something like. This is more of an organizational question as a COO. How do we replicate, mimic, replace improve maybe the human interaction that creates teams. Is that sacrificed that we all just have to now live? I mean, I'm in my basement right now. It's a lovely basement. I recommend it to everybody, but I'm literally in a basement, and there's one window, and it's over there. But is this my new reality? And where's my human connection? And Jay, your background as COO, maybe you could tell us what you're thinking.
Well, again, so in many ways, that's been the largest challenge. And I think, so what we decided to do very quickly, within 2 weeks of this pandemic and everybody working, I think the initial euphoria of, oh, we can work from home. I don't have to, particularly for people in Northern Virginia, not having to commute 30, 40 minutes each way was great. But then very quickly, it started to wear down and people were just beginning to get stir crazy, not being able to get out. There was obviously anxiety associated with, what the pandemic was and whether you're going to get sick. And, there was this idea that, oh my God, I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die, or somebody, one of my loved ones is going to die. So I think what we did was that we very early in the game decided that we were going to start to make investments in our people. So very few things like, we started to, we invested in, through a source, we were able to get some masks. We were able to get hand sanitizers. We distributed that to our employees, just made sure that they had something, just kind of feeling a little secure. We actually, a simple program, which I was surprised how effective it became. We decided to give $50 every week to every employee through Grubhub and said, you know what, why don't you go support your local eatery that's doing delivery and just get some food home so you don't have to cook every day. And we did that for 8 or 9 weeks. And I was just amazed at how positively employees looked at that, because for them, even just one day of being able to go out and not cook and just get some food from outside or go pick up something from outside was very valuable. And then what we did is we started to hold contests every weekend or every other weekend for employees' children, an art contest for employees' children, writing contest for kids, or a dance contest for employees. And then we started to have leadership seminars, right? So it became an opportunity for people to virtually interact when they really couldn't, right? And I think that really helped the team kind of stay with, the stir craziness that was setting in for people. I mean, I think it was a great investment for us. We're continuing to do that even now. And I think it's just something that I would recommend to other small businesses too.
On the topic of resilience, in the context of IT, Mark made this sort of global point about how Accenture sees resilience. I assume you concur with that, but for the sake of the audience, I mean, there's resilience and there is worst case planning. Is resilience, and I asked this to Jay, but I ask all three of you, is resilience different from repeat systems, right? If you have fail safes, is resilience different than that?
So again, I don't know that from my standpoint, I don't think that you can actually separate when you start to talk about resilience, right? I mean, if you want to just talk about pure IT from a technology standpoint, you can talk about, backups and recoveries and continuity of operations, that sort of stuff. And all of those are nice buzzwords from a technology standpoint. But if you want to talk about resilience, right, I really think you cannot separate the IT from the people, right? Because, I mean, again, IT is only as valuable as its applicability and its utilization by people, okay? So certainly, yes, I mean, from what, Mark talked about, I think, you need to have the right technologies in place, but you also need to have the policies and procedures that allow people to be able to use that, not just for the work, but also for, things that help them become productive, right? For me, that's what IT resilience, or resilience, in the use of IT, or, however you want to phrase that.
So let me give my point of view on that. So from Dell's perspective, and the team that I manage, when you look at our company as a whole and we talk about resiliency, I mean, Dell's, the mission for Dell is, creating technology that we sell to our customers to enable we can enable human progress. That's the goal. That's the mission. That's what we're about, enabling human progress. So when I talk to my team about resiliency, and when you look at the definition, it means to bounce back, to be able to adapt or change or anything. I look at my team and I said, well, is this really bad for it's been 5 months. It's a moment in time. It's and let's say we live 100 years. It's a moment in time. It's a speck that, let's put it into perspective on, is it an inconvenience, or are you having trouble adapting? And I think that the smart business owners, they are not panicking, they are not worried. They are thinking and planning and visionary, and it brings out just the ingenuity of really good leaders that adapt and also inspire people. Like, this is an inspiring moment for companies to do great things. You look at what Jay has done with his company and the amount of philanthropic work that they've done, what Accenture's done with philanthropic work, Dell, hundreds of millions of dollars of philanthropic work that we do. It allows people to actually, so from a resiliency standpoint, it's more, I would look at it as to inspire people. It's a moment in time that we're dealing with. It's 5 months that we've been quarantined and businesses have been, and I think that things will change. Just inherently they'll change, but this is where great companies are born, because they're able to survive these really tough times based on great leadership.
To adapt, to be resilient also means to adopt new technologies in some cases. And Sean, I think we were talking the other day about, I was on the Dell technology website, and there was this, I wrote it down, this phrase, hold on a second. Yep, this is for the audience. This is the crawl, walk, run conversation of adopting new technologies. And to the point, I think, Sean, you just made, don't just drop a bunch of cash on a bunch of boxes and think you just solved your problem. Yeah. What you just did was you just dropped a bunch of cash. That's what you just did. Mm-hmm. But you have this PC and infrastructure as a service. And I guess it's an on-demand thing. Can you tell us about that? And so if we have companies, SMB companies, who are quasi in the cloud and quasi on premises at home, and they got caught, midstream with the pandemic, is this a type of approach that is the amuse-bouche, the introduction to technologies like these?
The point of view that we have, Dell, or just in general, is that the world will be a hybrid model. There are some companies that will put their workloads into the cloud. Dell's focus is, how do we help you get there? How do we help you do that? With products that we have like VMware and being able to use multiple clouds. We think also the world is a multi-cloud environment. But we also think for some companies that there is a cost advantage to being on-prem. So we talk to a lot of companies when they're refreshing PCs. Why are they in the PC business? Why do they have people that are imaging PCs? And some customers say, well, that's what we've always done. This is a time for you to actively change and innovate, digitally transform, to maybe get out of the PC business and do it as a service. So if the cost of parts goes up for memory, that's not the customer's problem because they pay a fixed rate. It puts the problem on Dell Technologies. And it's as a service. And when you look at even infrastructure, we think that infrastructure, some customers prefer to finance or do a flexible payment model. We think that for companies to conserve cash flow on a month-to-month basis, it's no longer a technology discussion, it's a finance discussion on how they best manage their cash flow. So the hybrid model that we look at is infrastructure as a service, PC as a service. We think not everything should go straight to the cloud for the simple reason that it's just too expensive for some of these smaller companies, whether it's Amazon or whether it's Google or whether it's Azure or even CenturyLink, whatever the cloud provider might be. We think that there's a happy medium, but it is definitely a hybrid model. And when we hear companies say, well, we're going all cloud, they will come to the realization in their own time that that may not be their reality for some of their main workloads. But we try to help them through that.
Right.
And then if they are going to the cloud, how do we help them get there, or at least over a period of time? Because it's not Friday you're on premise and then Monday you're in the cloud. So it's more of a have them understand the workloads that they can put in the cloud easily and work some type of hybrid model.
Get their feet wet. And now we can actually hear from the audience, because that poll, hopefully you've all had a chance to answer those 5 questions. Very straightforward. I'm going to close the poll now. And then we're going to look at the results. You should be able to see them as well. I'll read them off in any case, and then we'll just see what you, the business owners and leaders, are actually thinking. So give me a moment as I figure out how to get my computer working here. Okay, I've just ended the poll, and I'm going to just sort of read the results here. I believe that the panelists can also see these results. Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry. Share. Okay. You know why? Because there's a button that says share results. If you don't hit it, you don't share the results. See? Perhaps you now may see the results. But the first question was, what percentage of your workers do you think will continue to work remotely, even in part, after the COVID period has ended? And the answer is 25 to 50%. Wow. I mean, I think that I find that to be a realistic and surprising answer at the same time. Given the stat that I mentioned at the top in that little update. That was by far the #1 answer. Number 2, second question, and gentlemen, please, if you want to jump in and illustrate or have things you like to observe in these results, please do. The second question was, how productive do you feel remote employees are versus being in the office or on the job site? 71% of you said as productive. Again, an insight. Makes you wonder why you got in the car and sat in bumper to bumper traffic so often.
And John, can you imagine that question itself, go back to March or April and see what the answer would have been then versus now, right? To Jay's point and also Mark's point, that people will adapt. They will adapt and it'll eventually become seamless.
Well, also it gets into a whole conversation about management style and confidence in your employees to do their work rather than, hovering. It was an interesting, just quickly, Harvard Business Review last month had an interesting article about, just lost my train of thought, about productivity. And then actually in some studies, the productivity is much higher when working remotely because of the ability to concentrate. And that also the converse of that was when in the office, most people are away from their desk, many people, for a significant number of hours, and they're in meetings and they're here and they're there. So why are you paying for all that office space? One begins to wonder. Number 3 question was, in normal times, how much of your customer interactions are online or via phone rather than in person? The answer is, in normal times, 43% of the respondents feel it's 50 to 75% of the time. So this goes back to use your word, a hybrid scenario of customer interaction. Number 4, how prepared is your company to conduct business remotely and online with employees, customers, and vendors? 39% very well prepared. That's great. That's a lot of confidence. And I wonder if the expectation will change over time as this sinks in, becomes a permanent way of doing business. And number 5, what is your #1 concern about moving or keeping your IT systems in the cloud or in a hosted environment? Overwhelming answer here is 46% on security. So security is the #1 concern. Jay, your company is involved in security solutions, obviously for federal agencies, but can you talk about that a bit as a concern?
I mean, look, again, I'm no security expert, so I want to kind of keep away from getting too deep into it. But again, obviously from our standpoint and for anybody, I think security is a cybersecurity is an absolutely a critical thing, right? For us as well. We've got, I mean, leave aside the work that we're doing for the agencies, which is obviously something we've got to adhere to, top secret guidelines when you're working with the Department of Defense or other agencies. But even internally, I think we've implemented several policies that are very critical for us, whether it is to just simple things like two-factor authentication and mechanisms that make sure that our data is not being compromised. It's very critical for us, and I suspect it is equally critical for all the other people, right? Just in terms of cybersecurity, just hacking attacks, or even when you're working with our VPNs and stuff like that. I mean, we get attacked all the time. I mean, just about a month ago, I got a notification from our IT group down in Blacksburg that we were subject to a pretty significant attack from out yonder in Asia. Won't mention I don't want to get into a political discussion here, but yeah, it was from a country that is well known to do that. So absolutely, I think security is a key issue.
And from an Accenture perspective, not a fair question to you, Mark. You're in the comms group, so it's a fair question. Has this becoming, given this behavior, I have to assume that attacks are up, meaning if we're working remotely, those are points of vulnerability. In your research, are you seeing this, and how are CSPs responding?
Security is the number one issue. It's no surprise that it came out number one in this survey. It comes out number one in every survey because what's happening to our digital environment is that the number of endpoints are just expanding, and we're talking about employees here. Pretty soon we're going to be talking about IoT. In fact, I'm sure some of the people on the phone are thinking about IoT. That creates an environment that invites more risk. And CSPs and Accenture and many of our partners have this as I would say the number one concern when you're thinking about designing new digital systems, especially for things like remote working and remote interaction.
Yeah, that's great. We have a question here. We're running a little short on time. I'm just I say, Sean, you jumped out, which is great, but I'm going to make you share your answer. But yeah. The question is, to all of you, how does a company which deals in laboratory services, operate with regard to working from home?
So I wrote back to Michael. First of all, appreciate the question, and it's a great question. And a lot of people aren't going to be as transparent, but there are several scenarios where work from home may not be an option.
Right.
And the point is, but there are still ways, and this is where the innovation side of any good leader will say, all right, let's break down every aspect of our services. It's like advertisers, when they have to come up with a list of ideas, they do what's called hitchhiking. They do creative thinking, and they develop lists. So the idea, and we just went through this with another company, another customer of ours who's in the services business, and says, how can I can't work from home. There's a portion of your business that probably can be work from home. It just takes, the idea exchange, and that's where being in an office together, the collaboration, the people who have the earphones on, yes, that's great that they can focus more, but there's that element missing of the collaboration and idea exchange to come up with solving Michael's question, or addressing Michael's question of saying, how can we take a portion of our services and make them remote? Not all of them, but that's where it comes with just different thoughts. And there is a way to do that somehow. And we have the same problem with our services organization that does installations. So
I think there's, like I said, I think that there's some parts of some businesses that you simply cannot virtualize or take home. I mean, that's just a fact of life. But I think innovation is the name of the game. I mean, I just, again, not related to lab services, but it was, something that came over yesterday, which is a really neat concept. It was from a local restaurant chain, and they kind of sent this email out. And what they've done is that they've put out this entire package. It's not just food delivery. It is raw materials that they deliver along with a detailed list of instructions on how to put the salads together and how to put the food together. And it comes with 2 glasses of wine and a choice of a wine bottle if that's what you want. So what they've now done is that they've recreated for you, if you want it, for a price, a restaurant experience at home, right? Which I thought was very neat, which was, somebody there was actually thinking about how to really kind of innovate during this time, right? I mean, I'm just kind of, again, not to get to lab services, but it was just a kind of a neat idea, I thought, that was helping fundamentally physical businesses like a restaurant to find innovations.
Right. All you have to do is sort of package a violinist in the bag and a nice dinner.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, my wife runs a medium-sized business in the jewelry industry, and I was talking to her the other day. Very similar idea about their outlets were retail, right? That's how they sell jewelry. People want to try it on and see it next to their other jewelry. And she said, we've had vendors come in and pitch us, AR solution, augmented reality solutions many times, and we've just thought, this is never worth it because the in-person experience is better. Well, maybe this is a time to reconsider, right? So, yeah.
One of my favorites was a few months ago, I think NASA, some of the folks, there's a rover on Mars, and they were giving it commands from home, which, talk about calling it in. Well, great. I think we're kind of short on time. I want to thank the audience very much, and I want to thank the panelists very much. Let me just go back and share my screen for a moment so we can, I can show you what we have coming up next in our webinar series. So on Thursday, August 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern, growth funding. And this is a great one as well. Another great panel. I was on the phone with them yesterday, in fact. It's going to be something really, really interesting and informative to pay attention to. This is where you can find this video and the others and compending documents. So it's at www.novaeda.org. And if you go to the events tab, you can then see all of the videos and the webinars that we have produced. And that's it. Well, thank you, panelists. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Take care and be well.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Make it a great day.